Good morning. Today's class is dedicated for the Refuah Shleima of Tzila, Liba, of Chana, Gitel. She should have a complete and speedy recovery. I'm excited to share that we're broadcasting today from a brand new microphone. It should be clearer, noise canceling. I want to thank Bill and Sue Auerbach for this beautiful gift, a silver microphone. And please share in the comments, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, how the sound is and any other suggestions for improvement here of this microphone. There was once a son who turned to his father as he was getting ready for his history exam. And he said, "Could you tell me, please, I don't remember what the teacher said. How did World War I start?" So the father's thinking, World War I, how did it start? Probably Belgium. He says, Belgium invaded Germany. So the mother overhears it, and she comes running in, and like a nice wife says to the husband, "You're wrong. What are you talking about? That's not at all what happened. You don't understand. The prince was shot, the Prince of Austria. You're telling him it's nonsense. He's going to fail the test because of you." And the father doesn't take this so simply. He starts to shout at his wife, and he says, "What are you talking about? You mind your own business. I didn't ask you for your opinion. I know what I'm talking about. You go do your thing." And the son looks up and says, I think I know how wars start now. I'm fine. People don't like when others look into their private business and start telling you what to do and how to behave and the way you ought to make your decisions. And they don't like the choices that you've done. No one appreciates it, right? No one likes to get a phone call from an in-law that starts off with this sentence, "I don't want to mix in, but," okay? People like their privacy, and they don't appreciate people telling them what to do. We have an instance in this week's Parsha where Moshe Rabbeinu separated from his wife, Tzipora, for reasons which I hope to discuss soon, but he separated from his wife. His sister, Miriam, found out about it, and she went and started talking, according to one opinion, to Aaron and Moshe, and saying, what's going on here? Why is he separating from his wife? Now, the reason that they understood why he's separating is because he's a prophet. And he has to be ready to speak to Hashem all the time, at any given moment. And he has to be pure, and he has to be focused, etc. So in order to have this holiness, he had to separate. Now, Miriam knew that the Jewish way is not to separate for holiness. If you're holy, it does not mean that you're not married. On the contrary, marriage is a holy thing. Miriam also felt she's a prophetess too. Her brother Aaron is also a prophet, and they're married, and it's fine. So why is Moshe separating from his wife? What they didn't know, which Hashem later explains, is that Moshe is a very different level of a prophet. He speaks to Hashem directly. It's not in a vision. It's not in some kind of inspirational way. It's direct. And therefore, he's the exception to the rule that after he was married and had children, and whether it was temporarily or that was the next stage, he separated from his wife. But be it as it may, Miriam went and spoke negatively to Moshe, to Aaron, mixing into Moshe's life. Now, Moshe did not respond. He didn't say anything. He was quiet. Give you an insight a little bit into Miriam's passion. She was very for having children. She believed in marriage. Even when, we mentioned this yesterday, even when F.R.E.E. made the decree against the Jewish people that every boy has to be killed, she came along and she said, we have to make sure that people have children. And one of the issues that happened is that Moshe's parents, before he was born, Amram and Yechevet, they separated. Amram said, look, what's the point of having children in this environment if we'll have a boy and the king is going to come and drown them? Who needs the pain? Who needs the suffering? What do we need it for? Let's just not be married. And he separated from his wife. And Miriam, who was 5 years old at the time, she went to her father and said, and get this, you're worse than F.R.E.E. Imagine. And Amram, Moshe's father, was not a simple person. He was a leader, informal, he was a leader of his generation. Why are you worse than F.R.E.E.? Because F.R.E.E. only has a problem with Jewish boys. But by you separating from my mother, what if you have another daughter? They already had Aaron. They had Miriam. Moshe was not born yet. And she said, what if you have a daughter? So by you separating, you're making sure that we don't even have a girl. He said, "You're right." And he remarried his wife. And when they got married, the Medrash says they got married with tremendous publicity. Even though it was a second marriage, she dressed up in a gown as if she was a young girl going to the chuppah for the first time and paraded through the streets. And other Jewish families that made the same calculation: why should we be married if our children will be killed? They also remarried. So this 5-year-old girl caused a lot of families to get back together. As a result, many children to be born. It was her project. This was her thing. It was her passion. As a result, of course, her parents had a child, not a girl, a boy. His name was Moshe, and the rest is history. So when she finds out that her brother separated from his wife, like, 1 second. You came about because we brought families together. You weren't even in the plan. And now you're doing the same thing. But what I want to focus on today is not why she did that as much as Moshe's response. Moshe takes an attitude and he says, he's quiet. He doesn't even respond. Now, Moshe could have said a lot of things. Listen up, sister. Dear sister, God trusted me to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. I think you could trust me that I know what I'm doing. Okay? Or, by the way, you don't understand my level of prophecy. Don't tell me what to do. There's a lot of things he could have answered, legitimate answers, even in a respectable way, but told her, listen, mind your own business. What I do, I'm not asking you for advice, and don't tell me what to do. And yet we find that he didn't say that. And Torah comes and gives the first time and only time a compliment to Moshe. It's interesting. This greatest prophet, Torah does not tell us any compliments about him. He was handsome. Torah does not tell us about his looks. Not in a compliment, doesn't compliment his looks. He was very wealthy. Torah doesn't talk about his wealth. It's quiet. His level of prophecy, here, Torah says, listen. Well, it does mention the level of prophecy in this parsha, but here Torah says Moshe was the most humble person on earth. And commentators understand this to mean he was the most humble person before, present, and after. There was no one, and won't be anyone as humble as Moshe. And that was his attitude, even though his sister is telling him something negative, criticizing him. And it's quite humiliating, that topic, if you will. And to tell him that, he doesn't respond. Why? Because he was extremely humble. It was very, very, it was anav, is the term in Hebrew. He was a humble person, and that's why he didn't respond. This requires a lot of explanation. You know, Torah never encourages lying, right? How could Moshe Rabbeinu, who was really a great person, how can you be so humble? You're not that small. You're a pretty great person. How could you come and be humble? Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest prophet ever lived. We just said that he spoke face to face with Hashem. Okay, he stood up against F.R.E.E. Tyrant, could have killed him in a second. Multiple times he went back to him. He took the Jewish people out of Egypt. He stood in front of the water and it was split. He led them in the desert for 40 years, fought against Amalek successfully, against Sicha and Og. He was not a small-time person. You know, today you have people, they have a little success in their life and they're already talking about themselves in third person, right? How do you be so humble if you're actually great? Should I lie? Should I say, I'm not that great? Forget about not responding to his sister. Maybe that's a more of a polite thing. But if Torah says he was the most humble person that lived, how do you be humble if you're actually great? If I know that I'm great, if I know that I'm the greatest prophet, if I know I took the people out of Egypt, if I knew that I stood up against F.R.E.E., I know that I'm great. I don't have to be showing off to you, but humble is it's a quality. And if you have what to boast, even if you're not walking around and boasting it to people, but yourself, you feel, look, I accomplished something. Is A, are you not supposed to feel that way? And B, how could Moshe Rabbeinu not feel that way? You accomplished a big stuff, okay? You took the people out of slavery, millions of people. Feel good. You're not showing off. You just know your true sense. What, should you fool yourself? There's a concept in Chassidus that just like you have to know your deficiencies, you have to know your qualities. If you're good at something, you have to know what your qualities are. Let's assume that you're a great physician. You're really, really good at what you do. And you say, I'm not really all that great. you could be saving lives, right? Whatever ability you have, whatever talent, skill, capability, don't fool yourself. Know it, own it, use it. So how are we supposed to take this? That Moshe Rabbeinu was just being humble. Was he lying to himself? Was he fake? And by the way, it's not just him. David HaMelech, King David, we find the same thing. Okay, he conquered Yerushalayim. He went all the way to Syria. And what does the kapitel say? Legava libi v'leiramu einai. My heart wasn't, boasted, and I didn't lift up my eyes. I was humble, despite all of his accomplishments. How do you do that in life? How do you achieve great things and still be very, very humble? There's a story. It's not talked about often, but I'm going to share it, I guess, publicly. There was a time in the 70s when there was a rift, if you will, a fight between the Chabad community and another Hasidic group, and I don't want to mention the name. And it was so difficult, and the animosity was so strong that if a Chabad Chassid was walking in that area, it was dangerous to walk in that neighborhood. Literally, rocks would be thrown at him, whatever else. And there was a woman, Chabad woman, a Bavitcher woman, who was teaching in a school of one of those in that community. And due to this rift that happened, she was called into the office and fired. Same day, you're gone. And she was very, very hurt. Okay, she had a relationship with the girls. She had a relationship with their mothers. She really got along with the staff at the school. It was her job. Good teacher. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, she's gone. Fired. She went to the Rebbe, got a private audience, and poured her heart out. That this group that's not getting along with Chabad has fired me. And she expected that the Rebbe would come out with a statement or speak about it at the next gathering for bringing and how terrible it is. The Rebbe leans in, tells her like this: I want you to find out who the new teacher is and get in touch with her and give her a report of every single girl, how they're doing, what's their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what she has to know. Because you're already in the middle of the year. Here's a new teacher that comes in. By the time she figures out every student and what their struggles are and gets to speak to the mothers, the year will be over. Who's going to lose out of this whole thing? The students. So put yourself aside and your feelings aside and think about what's the purpose here, what's the matara, and get in touch and figure this out. Help the girls. There was no mention of anything. That's a quality that you realize you have a purpose, and even if you're offended or someone said something or unjustly, there's still a way to deal with it. Okay, what's the secret? How do great people not act like little kids? How do they behave appropriately and deal with these types of offenses? Or in our case, how do you remain humble even when it's not so simple? And even when you know how great you are? And the answer is like this. The Rebbe tells us in the Likutei Sichos that Moshe Rabbeinu knew that his greatness is not his own. He didn't become Moshe Rabbeinu because he was so smart and he worked on himself and he tried this and he did that. He practiced, he trained, he became Moshe. Somebody put a crown on his head, Hashem. And he was humbled by the recognition. It's not my achievements. Hashem appointed me. It's him, right? There are many fathers to success, as the saying goes. It's not me. I didn't do this. I didn't bring this about. And he constantly had that feeling about himself. More so, Moshe Rabbeinu viewed his accomplishments and he said, if somebody else was in my place and had the same opportunities, the same gifts, the same talents that I have, they would probably do a much better job. He never for a second thought, I'm so great, look what I did. Hashem gave you this opportunity. He appointed you, he gave you special strengths, and you're doing it. It's not you. You're the tool that's leading it. So are we lying to ourselves about our accomplishments? No, we know very well what we did. But we're also keenly aware of where it's coming from. We understand that it's Hashem, and it's not us. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's quality. Right? Somebody once met a yid who was very, very generous. Asked him, "What's your secret?" He says, have a great partner. He gives me 100%, and all he asks is that I give away 10% to charity. He looks at it that his success is not his, it's Hashem's success. There was once a king, and this is an analogy that's brought in many places. There was a king who was walking along the road. He liked to travel a little bit and meet with the common folk, just to get a little bit idea of what the people are speaking about and how the regular people of the town think about him. So this king goes around, he's traveling, and he sees a shepherd, and he likes the shepherd. He has a conversation with him, he's impressed. The shepherd, he's living in the countryside the whole time, and he really enjoyed his time with him. A couple of days later, the king comes again. He's dressed in plain clothing. He's talking again to the shepherd. It's beautiful. After a few times, he says, listen, I want you to know I'm not a simple person, I'm the king, and I want to invite you to come to the palace. Forget this whole shepherd stuff. He comes to the palace. And the king really develops a deep friendship with him, and he promotes him. He becomes this, first he's working, then he becomes a minister, and he makes it all the way to the top in the palace. The other ministers and people in the palace didn't appreciate it. He was a shepherd. He has no connection. He has no experience. He rolls in there one day, and the king just appointed him, and he's going higher and higher. He's surpassing us. And they were looking for a way to get him. He said, listen, the king just appointed him as the treasurer. The minister of the treasury, and he was a shepherd. He's definitely stealing money. He had nothing, and now he's wealthy. Let's get him. And they started to look at him and study him and follow him, and we'll catch him. He's for sure taking money. And finally, they found that in his house, mansion, when he comes home, he has this private room that nobody goes into. Not even his wife, not his children. Nobody goes into this room. It's his man cave, right? So they decided that's it. That's for sure where he's keeping the money. And they went to the king, and they said, we have to tell you, as sad as it is, and I know he's very loyal and everything, but it turns out that he has this private chamber, and things are disappearing. The king calls him by surprise and says, I want to know what's going on in that chamber. And he falls to his feet, and he says, please, anything but that. Please, your majesty, I don't want to open it. And the king says, it's not a question, it's a command. He takes the ministers with this fellow, and they walk to his house, and he forces them to open the door, and they walk in, and they see there's a flute, shepherd clothing, and a small, like not a rocking chair, but like a chair that shepherds sit on. He says, what's this? He says, I want to tell you something. The first day I came to the palace and I had this connection with the king, I realized that very soon it's going to get to my head. And I may start stealing money. I may start taking advantage of people. I may forget what it's all about. I'm going to feel great about how accomplished I am. I'm in the palace. Overnight, success. And I decided that every single day, and I've done this for years, I come home, I go into my private room, I put on the shepherd's clothing, I take out my flute, and for a few minutes, I go back to that time when I was nobody, when I was just a shepherd, before the king met me. And I recognize and I think of what the king did for me. He pulled me out of there into this new reality that I have today. Moshe Rabbeinu always knew that my qualities are not mine. Hashem gave this to me and gave me a mission and gave me the ability to achieve it. It's not my own success. And that's how he was able to be humble his whole life. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus, says like this, that everyone's worried about too much gaiva, too much pride. People are concerned, right? I feel too great about myself. Gaiva is very dangerous. The Gemara tells us that a person that has gaiva, Hashem says, God says, Ein ani v'hu yichayim v'adur ke'echad. I can't live with this person in the same place because he's too arrogant. Obviously, Hashem is everywhere, but his presence is less felt when there's arrogance. It's a hallmark of holiness is humility, of anava. So the Baal Shem Tov says most people are afraid of gaiva. And Baal Shem Tov says, I'm really afraid of too much shiflus, which means too much, let's call it humility, loosely, in the wrong way. A person says, me, I'm nobody. Could you help me out and help me with something? I don't know how to do it. Well, you do know. No, not me, right? Are we looking for someone that could teach a class? Sorry, I don't know how to teach. But if you do and you don't, and you say, I'm humble, that the Baal Shem Tov says is what I'm afraid of. If you're very good at something, and you could contribute through that, and you could help them, and every person has something they could do, whether it's in any relationship, in any setting, you always have something that you're good at, that you could contribute. and you say, no, I'm too humble. That the Baal Shem Tov said, that's what I'm afraid of. We had an Ayem Yom the other week, where the Rebbe says that you should love criticism because it puts you on great heights. To appreciate criticism. If you don't have humility, you can't appreciate criticism. I'm so great, look what I did. Who are you to tell me? But if you recognize that you're here for a purpose and you have a mission, then your sister could come and tell you the way Moshe's sister did whatever she wants, and you're quiet. You don't even respond, and you have what to respond. And Hashem punished her. She was wrong in the way she did it. She meant well, but she was wrong. She gets saras. But that's the level of humility, and not because you have nothing to be proud of. There was a bacher, a student in yeshiva, who all his friends were teasing him that he has too much pride. He's too arrogant. And the next time he had a meeting with the Rebbe, in the early years, for your birthday, you get a private audience with the Rebbe. So he went into the Rebbe and he said, my friends are teasing me. They're telling me that I have too much. Guys, I don't think so, but I think I'm humble, right? but what should I do? The Rebbe said, which means it's okay. You could be a little arrogant as long as you have what to be proud of. You know what I mean? He was finishing a lot of volumes of learning, and he was covering a lot of ground, and he was coming across a little bit as arrogant. It's okay. Just make sure that you actually have what to be proud of. Okay. Let's not forget, while we focus on humility, that we should also know our qualities. It's very important. Conclude with something short on the parsha. The name of the parsha is called Ba'al Leischa, which means when you light the menorah. It's Aaron's command to light the menorah. But Torah does not use the word that it can use, like kindle the menorah, light the menorah. Lahadlik ner shel Shabbos. That's how we say it, right? Lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. That's how we light the menorah. That's how you say it. Ba'al Leischa means to lift up, to bring up. Right? When you bring up the flame, it doesn't mean to light the flame. Why does Torah use this term, which is an unusual term? Because the goal here is not just to light it. Rashi tells us, which means the flame has to come up on its own. It's not enough that you have the matches there. Okay, I lit it. Take the match away, and this fire should light also. Our goal in life and our purpose as Yidden is to be a light, to shine on our surroundings. You can't just receive warmth, have light in you. You have to give it off. You have to be in a way that you could ignite others, that whatever you do and how you do it is an example. It's showing, it's sharing. You're a fire that brings warmth to other people. A wonderful day. Thanks for joining. Share your comments. Make sure you share it on Facebook and like it on YouTube. Subscribe. Have a wonderful day.